Hello again, my friends from Botswana and other people who might be watching from around the world. Who knows who might be lurking in and trying to attend this special part two session. Well, if you made it through part one, you came back for part two, maybe you didn't get bored and fall asleep. Maybe you decided it was something relevant for you, or maybe you decided that first part was pretty boring and maybe it can't be any more boring than that. So come back for part two, it's got to be better than part one. Whatever the reason is, I'm glad you're here and joining us today. Part two will cover my model called TEC-VARIETY from my book, free book, Adding TEC-VARIETY. My son did the book cover, so don't critique it. It stands for 10 principles of motivation. And each one of those 10, we have 10 activities for each of the 10 in the book. So 10 times 10 is 100. Hence, there are 100 ideas. And there's a variation for each idea. So that means there's 200 ideas in this book for free on how to teach online or blended. There's a second book that I'll talk about in part three that's not free. But this one is free in Chinese and in English, and it's been downloaded over 250,000 times. Then the counter stopped working. Anyways, this Adding TEC-VARIETY, 100 plus activities for motivating and retaining learners online. So people are using this TEC-VARIETY approach all around the world. When I was in the Philippines, I told the people of the Philippines, I'll make my next book free because my publisher was charging too much. And so it is. So this book is intentionally free, and that's the reason for it. And hopefully you can download the whole thing at TEC-Variety or by chapter. So if you go TEC-Variety.com, you can download the chapter on engagement or the chapter on feedback or the chapter on variety or curiosity or relevance or tension or yielding products or tone and climate, which is the first one of the 10 chapters, one of the main chapters. Before that, we have more theory chapters. And actually the book is dedicated to my dear friend and colleague, Kim Foreman, who's here in the picture right there. You can barely see her. She passed away in Rwanda a few years back. She was on a Jeep and she gave up her seatbelt to someone else, and the Jeep flipped and rolled over and she hit her head and passed away. I went to graduate school with Kim Foreman. She was a professor at San Francisco State University and special person. Her and her husband did missionary work in Rwanda and other countries. And so I dedicate the book to her. Anyways, this is a little side story. A friend I met long ago in graduate school. I'm going to try and share my screen now again, like I was before. And let's see if I can call up the slides that I had up here earlier. And here we go for part two, introducing the TEC-VARIETY model. From tone, encouragement and feedback, curiosity. The most downloaded chapter in the book might be curiosity. Autonomy, variety, relevance, interactivity, engagement, tension, and yielding products. TEC-VARIETY spells TEC-Variety. You can go to TEC-Variety.com as it says in there. I'm curious, during COVID times, if you're reflecting on your philosophy or your teaching approach in your classes, how often and to what degree are you reflecting on that? Have you been to an e-learning summit or conference or institute training you how to teach remotely so your students can learn better? Have you taken an e-learning conference or blended learning? Or have you attended one of my sessions before in the past? Have you gone to Contact North website in Ontario, which has free webinars every week? You can go to teachonline.ca/webinars and get a free webinar on using Zoom or on teaching blended or motivating students online, like I did one for them. So that's Contact North in Ontario, Canada, in the province there. They've been doing a lot for the world to help the world out. I have a special show called silverliningforlearning.org every Saturday in the US, early Sunday morning in Botswana. Usually we're at 5:30 p.m. Eastern time, about midnight or 1 a.m. in Botswana. Sometimes we offer it earlier in the morning in the US. It's late in the afternoon in parts of Africa. We cover different topics every week, different people and projects and initiatives that are happening around the world. And these are all up on the web for free. If you go to silverliningforlearning.org and our YouTube channel, we stream live every week. And those are a couple of our shows. Another person you might want to take a look at is Catlin Tucker. Go to catlintucker.com and get her books on blended learning and other advices on teaching and learning. She was a guest in Silver Lining for Learning a couple weeks ago. This week, we'll have a guest who does research in Antarctica. And last week, we had people from South Africa and the Bahamas and Iran and the US. Catlin Tucker talks about 10 ways to design your classroom to be more engaging, 10 ways to use tools like Padlet to share ideas and words, to use virtual jigsaw activities and scavenger hunts and artistic poetry and digital choice walls. She has all sorts of interesting ideas that you can use in your classroom, whether it is a scavenger hunt to find things online or having fun with everyday math objects that relate to mathematics. She has a lot of starter activities, in effect, that you could be using in your class. Digital choice walls, letting them choose. This is one of her activities where she has a bunch of activities on a wall in Flipgrid or a wall in Padlet, I should say, and lets students choose which idea to share and engage in. Because she knows that Jerry Brophy talked about motivating students. She knows that it's important to have some variety, some choice, some fun, some challenge, some feedback, enthusiasm. You see, these are principles that come from motivation literature from about 30 years worth that Jerry Brophy and many other motivational psychologists have come up with. And I read all their books, well, a couple of their books at least. And I came to a conclusion as to what they were saying. What were some of the best ideas in terms of motivating students online? And these were among them, including intrinsic motivation, someone's passions and interests and curiosity, volition, to seek out new knowledge, not to avoid. And so I've organized the ideas in the Adding TEC-VARIETY book on the degree of time, risk, and cost. Low risk, low cost, low time, or high risk, high cost, high time activities. And so we've been trying many things out with the TEC-VARIETY model for the last almost 20 years, actually. It got published in 2014, finally. It took me a long time to publish those ideas. In the end of the book, we have a chart that lists all the activities from the degree of time, cost, and risk, and student-centeredness. At the beginning of the book, we have another chart that just simply lists all the activities that we use in the book, just as an organizational aid. We just list all the activities that are there, and so forth. So let's give some examples of what exists in the TEC-VARIETY book that you can choose from. First of all, the first principle of TEC-VARIETY is tone or climate. Abraham Maslow, the psychologist, said we need to have a psychologically safe environment. We need to have comfort and a sense of belongingness. So the first principle gets at that, if you were to read the screen. And so one way is to have breakout rooms where students share their expectations, they share their ideas, they share a little about themselves, introduce themselves to others. You might have a lot of ideas about how to use breakout rooms. But recently, in September, a university in New Hampshire called Plymouth State had a 16-minute video summarizing ways to use breakout rooms. So if you download my slides, you can watch that video about the use of breakout rooms, non-boring breakout rooms. We don't want boring, do we? Well, one way not to have boring is to use Flipgrid. Flipgrid is developed by my friend Charlie Miller at the University of Minnesota, where they talk a little bit funny up there, yeah. And they're all from Norwegian, Norway and Sweden and all that. Well, he built Flipgrid to be threaded video discussions, right? And so you have these short 1 minute, 30 second or minute and a half, but I think they're a minute and a half overview kind of summaries in Flipgrid. Now, Flipgrid is free with Microsoft now. It doesn't cost any money to use, at least here in the US, and I assume that's the same in Botswana, that if you use Microsoft products, you get Flipgrid for free with it. And you can have threaded discussions on the book chapters, on different ideas. So it's really interactive. And I use it to have students introduce themselves in my class. I usually have them summarize what they've learned in my classes. Sometimes they read a few articles and they summarize their learning. Another way to create safe tone and climate, is, as I mentioned in the first part, is to have a video, musical video introduction. My friend Hee Jung An at William Patterson University in New Jersey had her students all play music synchronously in Zoom to create a fun musical way to start the class off. And she was the conductor, as you can see up there. That's another way. Musical choirs, virtual choirs, introductions, safe climate. You can have a safe climate with Flipgrid. You can have a safe climate with breakout rooms. You can have your students post introductions about themselves in the learning management system, post their commitments, post, what their expectations are for the class. They could also do video introductions. The instructor can do a video introduction to create a safe tone or climate of what's going to happen in the class. You can also use a tool called Slido. Slido is in the news actually today. Some company just bought Slido out. I think it was Cisco. So they bought Slido because people are using Slido at the beginning or end of conferences and events. Slido is a way to use your mobile to vote on the best questions or best ideas. And then the one that gets the most votes might be the questions that are asked. They're anonymously posting or typing the questions in their mobile. And then everybody reads these and they don't know whose question they're rating, high or low. They just rate the best questions. And so there you go with Slido. It's a cool tool for thinking about students' ideas, questions, and so forth. If you have a guest speaker in your class, your students could all type in questions on their mobile, and then they all vote on which ones to ask the guest speaker. If you're using Poll Everywhere, a similar kind of tool, you could have interactive polls with your students that their data will show up automatically in your presentations based on their responses. Poll Everywhere is a free tool, polling tool for students. And you get their answers to your questions and so forth. Vocaro is a tool for you to give feedback to students. Vocaro is a tool where you record your voice and you hit stop when you're done. So instead of typing your answers, your feedback to your students, you are voicing it, speaking it aloud. And so encouraging them, giving them feedback, hearing from you. They get a link and they click on that link and they hear your audio feedback in Vocaro. It's a free tool. A lot of these are free. Here's another free one, Quizlet. Christiana told me if I said free, you'd like me. So I say free, free, free. Quizlet's the largest quizzing tool in the world, I think. And it has sample quizzes in many topics. And so you can create a quiz in algebra, geometry, or English, or whatever, all free in Quizlet, or use the existing ones. Also free and available to use is the Khan Academy. The Khan Academy is built by Salman Khan, who saw his nieces and nephews struggling with their geometry, and so he did videos for them. And these videos he did to help his nieces and nephews went viral around the world. And now today, millions of learners every day go online to use the Khan Academy videos. And Salman Khan was given like $10 million more recently from Bill Gates from Microsoft. And Bill Gates said, why don't you put some more assessments and make them personalized, individualized assessments. So the Khan Academy is expanding. And they now have topics, and you name it, finance, sociology, psychology, algebra, geometry, you name it, it's in the Khan Academy. And many people use the Khan Academy. Also for encouragement and feedback, you could create tutorials. You could create how-tos, how to do something. So there are free tools like Jing, Screener, TikTok, Screenomatic, tools that are free to use to provide some kind of ideas for their projects. How to use a certain software tool. If you have problems with the software, this might be an idea to try and use that, to use the software. And so, this would be an interesting tool to try out anyhow, to use Jing or GoView to guide your students, to give them some feedback on their work, or to provide a tutorial aid to them. One thing that I often use is multimedia in the news. I often use news articles to excite my students, to get them interested in the class or in the topics of the class. And so this young girl didn't have access to the internet in Malaysia, so she climbed a tree where internet access was better before she took her final exams. And she got a lot of attention from the media out there. And lo and behold, the local service provider installed the internet in her part of Malaysia in Sabah. The multimedia news can bring your students to understand what's happening in the real world, relates to your class. And there she is, sending her final exams. Getting students curious through the news. If you teach in science, there's all sorts of science articles on CNN and the BBC and other news resources that you can provide for your students to get them excited about science or math or computers or whatever. You can create mystery stories like teachers in Indiana did here, and get your students excited through these mystery stories that they posted once a day as a spy agency. You might have interesting news about new dinosaurs being discovered or new species being discovered, like the tiny bug slayer or the crazy beast. Sounds like a cool kind of thing. So you put the article up first, and then you teach the content second. Don't teach the boring content first. First, put something interesting that's happening in the news. The oldest person to run a marathon at age 104. He came out of retirement at age 102. He was running marathons. Or the first woman to run the Boston Marathon 50 years ago, re-ran it a couple of years ago. She's now in her 70s. She's rerunning it. So, something exciting where the oldest woman to run the 100-meter dash and win, something exciting. If you teach fitness and healthcare and exercise management or something, you put these stories up. If you teach photography, you teach how to take pictures, right? You can put old pictures up, old cameras up. The oldest surviving photo of a human being in Paris, France in 1938, you can see the person there getting his shoe shined. The oldest surviving photo of a real human being. Some of the old cameras. If you teach, photo media or media studies today, these old pictures are exciting. It's historical. It's fun. Number 3 is curiosity, building curiosity. I might do it through an online scavenger hunt where students find things and get bonus points. Number 4 is variety and novelty. I might have students create animated presentations using Animaker, which is a free cloud-based tool that has props and transitions and backgrounds. My students love it. They love creating little animated fun presentations that summarize their learning. And they have competitions in effect for who does it. I might have little game show quizzes. My students might build a Jeopardy kind of game show quiz for my learning theories class that's at a free website called Jeopardy Rocks. It's a way to quiz your students on the basic facts. I might go to random.org, which has virtual dice on the internet, or a coin that you flip, or a randomizing tool that randomizes who's going to present when. So it has dice, cards, coins, passwords, lists, all sorts of things are at random.org to randomize your class. So it tells the order that students will present in. It might randomize the agenda that you have set up for today to make you a little more spontaneous in presenting. So random.org is a way to create fun and some novelty. Also, Wheel Decides. If you put your agenda items in Wheel Decides and you spin the wheel, it tells you what agenda item to start with. So if you can roll the dice and have a number that shows up, and that's where you start. So all these are free little fun tools out there. Jeopardy Rocks, which I mentioned, random.org, which I mentioned, and Wheel Decide. All three are free. All three are fun. You don't have to use them, but there's something to consider. Kahoot is another one. I have a friend in Norway. In Norway, he's a computer science professor. And actually, the tool is being bought out, so maybe it won't be free for long. I don't know. Or maybe they got funding to build more. I think he got funding to build more. And Kahoot lets you, on your mobile device, have exam competition, quiz competitions. So everyone has a persona or a name they type in, and then they have their answers. So go to getkahoot.com and have some fun quizzing your students. And the students who score really high want their picture with the score. Another free little fun tool is called Future Me, where you can write an email to your future self. Okay, that's really cool. So I write an email to myself and I type up at the end of summer, what are you going to have done? Are you going to publish a new book? Or whatever it is. And then I get an email in 3 months or 6 months saying, Dr. Curt, did you publish that new book? So Future Me, writing to yourself. Another free websites or multiple websites are MOOCs, massive open online courses. Students often can take a MOOC in my class and write a reflection on their learning in that MOOC and replace one of the other assignments in the class. So that's kind of cool to have students who take a MOOC and can try things out, content out. So in effect, they're taking a separate class, a second class, in addition to my class, by enrolling in a MOOC and reflecting on their learning that took place in that particular MOOC. So I might show them, here are some MOOCs out there on learning theory. There's 10 of them, one from Harvard and Stanford and Penn State and wherever. And then they take it, or a MOOC on computer coding, or a MOOC on speaking English, or a MOOC on writing professional English, or whatever it is, communication or fitness or health. And you can go, if you want to go to Class Central, it has a list of them, over 11,000 of them, I think. ClassCentral.org or .com. So number 5 is autonomy or choice. They can choose a MOOC, that's autonomy and choice. They can go to a digital wall and decide to, which assignment they're going to do. There's 9 assignments, pick one. So it's a digital choice wall from Catlin Tucker, who I mentioned earlier. Or they might have a jigsaw. We have a home group or a base group of 5 students or 3 students or 4 students or 6 students. And they get numbers, number 1, number 2, number 3, number 4, number 5. And number 1 might be assigned chapter 1. Number 2 might be assigned chapter 2. Number 3 might be assigned chapter 3, and so forth. All the number 1s might go to a breakout room to talk about chapter 1. All the number 2s would go to another breakout room to talk about chapter 2. And when they're done, they might come back to their home group to share what they learned within their expert groups and create a presentation on the entire book for the whole class. It's a way to jigsaw up the activity. So everyone's in charge of 1 chapter, or 2 chapters, or 1 task or piece of a task. They also might go to biography.com. Biography.com is a pretty cool tool, I must say. I use it all the time. Biography.com or famouswomeninscience.com or other biography-like tools out there get students to understand that person a little better. It's like an encyclopedia online. So here's Alexander Fleming, who's a world famous and Nobel Prize winner from 1945 for understanding and discovering penicillin. Now, in 2020, we have award-winning scientists and doctors fighting COVID-19 and new vaccines being discovered from Moderna and Johnson & Johnson and Pfizer and other companies today. And so they may be in biography.com in the future. Some of these famous people have Twitter feeds, and you can follow their Twitter feed. Another autonomy and choice is my student said to me, Dr. Bonk, I really don't want to do your assignment. It's too easy. Let me make it harder. Instead of doing a glossary for your class, I want to do a multimedia glossary. And I want to connect this glossary to pictures and to videos and to conferences and to books. And they do these wonderful multimedia glossaries, and the links are there. So when you download my slides, all these links are active links. You can click on and see the examples of multimedia glossaries or jigsaw activities or Jeopardy games or whatever. You can see the examples. Flipping the classroom has become big today, where you might have your students watch your lecture before coming to class, and then during class, you do activities, you do cases, you analyze scenarios, you do problem-based learning. In the class, you're activating those nodes, the knowledge that they learned through the video lectures. Now you flipped it. So instead of lecturing during class, you basically lectured before class in the videos, like the recording I have here. So Christiana can take the video recordings and maybe do a flipping the classroom activity with all your teachers there in Botswana. They can watch Dr. Bonk's video, and then afterwards, they can have an in-service activity, professional development with these teachers who use one or more of the ideas I laid out today. Very popular. I've got research in mainland China and Korea, 4 or 5 studies of flipping the classroom. Very popular in East Asia today, because East Asia is moving from very didactic, instructor-centered instruction to getting students to be more active and engaged in that process. In Nepal, my friends in Nepal have students learning online and getting English certificates online, choosing from a whole bunch of MOOCs that are on the internet. And their students came online to talk to my students a couple weeks ago. Young 15-year-old, 14-year-old, 16-year-old kids are taking college classes from Harvard and Berkeley and having fun doing so and getting certificates from the US consulate in Nepal. Very cool kind of thing. MOOCs for English and college prep, in effect. Now, again, we can be bringing in the students from anywhere in the world, from Mexico. Want to go to Mexico? Want to go to Brazil? Want to go to Brazil? Where else are we going to go? We can go down here to Angola, right? It must be somewhere near to Botswana. We've got Botswana down here too. Yeah, if we can get that real close. Yeah. So I might get people from Egypt and India. In fact, I spoke to people in Mumbai last week, Sri Lanka the week before, Riyadh, Beijing. So the guy in the left, upper left there is Mike Melenda, who developed the course I was teaching. He developed it 40 years ago. So he came back to talk to my students about the importance of the class, making the course relevant to my students, making them understand why it exists. My student from Bangkok, Suthiporn Senjapanrav, just was talking to me the other night, got an article published, blah, blah, blah. And she came last year and talked to my class about using that content, explaining what she uses and what she doesn't use and so forth, what her job is today back in Bangkok. I had a colleague at the University of Georgia, another colleague at Stanford in that picture who talked about inventions that they've created. I've got people who developed, the guy kind of below in the middle developed Flipgrid, Charlie Miller, you can't, in black there, his shirt in black. a guy from Indiana University who was retiring, who developed a lot of software. I had him come tell his history of teaching the class and talk about, his name is Dr. Marty Siegel, about the technology tools he invented over his career. I had Jim Nagaya come in from Nigeria talking about all the MOOCs that he took, over 700 of them. So making it relevant or meaningful for your students, having students have these guest experts to talk to interact with, and so forth. I have my students edit Wikipedia pages so they can understand what a wiki is. They can understand that it's knowledge that's negotiated, in effect. And there's a project in Africa called Wikifundi project. It's an offline editable environment that enables communities to have a similar experience to editing a Wikipedia. Wikifundi mimics the experience of editing Wikipedia when technology access and electricity outages fail and are not available. So maybe that's something that you can all utilize. My friend Mark Braun does relevant and meaningful work with medical students, with first-year medical students, by having them do cases, case analysis, a man with chest pains, a woman with a cough, and so forth, someone feeling dizzy. And they get heart rate and blood pressure and temperature and other information, blood slides, and they have to make a decision of what to do with the patient. And so very effective and free, that my friend Mark Braun has developed at Indiana University. In San Francisco, at the University of California at San Francisco School of Pharmacy, they have students edit Wikipedia pages as a project to improve the Wikipedia pages. So my students actually did a wiki book and built a book. Some people have them, students analyze raw data online, computer code, financial statements, healthcare data. And there are a lot of websites which have raw computer code that have errors in it, and students have to figure out what the error is and improve that data as part of their training to be a computer scientist. You might have English lessons online from the BBC Learning English, where they're practicing their grammar and their spelling and their pronunciation or hearing it and so forth. They might have mini lessons and cases that they engage in or engage with, and understand the colloquialisms and idioms and so forth. Duolingo is another tool that lets you learn languages online that's become very popular in the United States today. There are a number of these language learning tools that have been developed over the past 10 or 15 years to learn Spanish at Spanish Pod, Chinese at Chinese Pod. There are a number of people who've built these systems and tools that I've interviewed for my book, The World is Open, that came out, and I got to know about these different tools that are out there. There's also a tool called Trello, and Trello is a team-based management tool for list making. And it's a way to organize lists. And then underneath the list, if you click on the list, are resources and references and links that students might actively go for. So Trello is for teams to organize teamwork, and the teachers use it to manage the groups. You can watch where the students are and monitor their progress, and particularly during homeschooling activities. And they might create a newsletter, for instance, different drafts along the way, a class newsletter. Number 7 is interactive and collaborative. So Trello was one example of interactive and collaborative activities, team management. Another activity for interactive would be having your students do oral assessments. My friend Danielle Logan at Griffith University in Australia has her students come to take an exam online as orally. They speak instead of taking it in pen and paper. To me, that would take a lot of time. I don't do this one, but I mention it as an example. And she's got a website that explains how to do oral exams in practice. So you can click on that link and she explains the format. Another tool out there is called Meeting Words. Google Documents you might have heard of. Now Comment. These are all tools that let you collaborate on documents. Many people might have heard of Google Documents, but not Meeting Words. Meeting Words lets every person have their comments in a different color. And so they collaborate on a document, on an abstract, on a proposal, for instance, in Meeting Words or in Google Documents. It's a way for online collaboration to occur. 30 years ago, I did a national survey on online collaboration tools that were out there in 1990. A lot of things have happened in the past 30 years, but believe me, there were a lot of cool stuff back then that were being used. So that's a Meeting Words example. Interactive and collaborative. You might have a guest speaker, and that guest speaker might say to you, I don't have time to do a presentation. And I will say to the guest speaker, my students will do the presentation for you. They'll put your slides together based on your research. They'll post questions in the chat window based on your research. And so oftentimes they'll say, oh, that sounds kind of interesting. And guy Ray Junko there did this in my class once. He said, I don't have time to come to prepare a talk. So I said, my students will post PowerPoints of your data, and you can just comment on your data or pass if you don't want to comment. And they'll post questions in the chat window because they'll have read your work. It was really it was a top 10 ever experience. More recently, I'm using a tool like Nuclino. Nuclino is a wiki-like tool that lets students debate and discuss ideas. It's free, it's not perfect. It's a wiki-like tool, so if you delete something, it's gone for good. So you have to be careful about deletion. So I use Nuclino to have teams debate chapters of a book, to debate pro and con side. Another interactive and collaborative idea is to go to a website called Virtually Inspired. Virtually Inspired was built by my friend Susan Aldridge in Philadelphia at Drexel University. She's the president of Drexel Online. And so she's built Virtually Inspired. Virtually Inspired is a place where you have the best of physics and engineering, science, chemistry, kinds of things. They have simulations, animations, labs. And so you can see the embryo lab for mice. You can see the simulation of a hospital and a patient in a bed. You can see the simulation of a lab and doing tests with COVID samples or whatever they're working on. And so forth and so on. Different lab activities are free. These are freely available. Here's a security system in a company, a lab. So you can download the tools at Virtually Inspired and use them in your classes. You might have storytelling activities for virtual patients, for instance. You might have a map that you link in files and pictures and video links. There's a tool called Thinglink, which is an interactive map creator. So if you use Thinglink and put a map in there, you can embed links to different examples in history and geography, and connect that historical info to the geographical location where those events took place. You can have different challenges then for your students in looking for Van Gogh paintings in Amsterdam or wherever they are in the world. You can look in America during Thanksgiving and point out what's happening in the different 50 states. You can go to Athens, Greece, and put in links in there for pictures of the Parthenon or the Acropolis and so forth. So again, healthcare scenarios I mentioned already with patient charts and data and blood pressure and heart rate and barometric pressure. There's a website called PHET. PHET are little micro worlds, little simulations or labs to teach physics, biology, chemistry, and earth science. They are free from the University of Colorado. And so you can go to these PHET and get sound and motion, heat and thermodynamics, magnetism and electricity, all little simulation worlds that students can explore. Today, a real popular thing that's coming, it's not quite here yet, is to do augmented reality tasks, whether you're exploring the Egyptian pyramids or going to Stonehenge in the UK or going to Mount Rushmore in the United States or some other point of interest. AR, augmented reality in education, is a growing area, and it has a lot of possibilities for learning, from UNESCO World Heritage Sites to exploring the human heart to something else. And so today, teachers can wear augmented reality headsets, and as they wear them, they can look over the top of their students and see the charts that appear over their heads. It will tell them what questions each student got right or wrong, so you can know which student, floating above their head is this data. Really cool. On the remote, you can see this floating data, and you know which students are going to need your help, which students are struggling, which students might need some personalized or individualized attention.
Keep it secret. Keep it secret.
And also there are virtual reality chemistry. And if you click on the link later, you can watch the student interact with different chemical symbols and learn chemistry in a unique virtual way. I never took chemistry, so because I was afraid of the instructor, but I would have learned it and liked learning it this way. There is also Google Cardboard, where they can take students on virtual expeditions or field trips, if you will. And this is very cheap technology that's available today with mobile phone devices. Recently, the British Museum created an interactive timeline of the exhibits in the British Museum that are from Africa, Americas, Asia, or Europe, and Oceania. And so you can look for particular moments in time. Look 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, or maybe go 100 years ago or 50 years ago, and different artifacts will pop up. There's also virtual reality orchestras, virtual reality choirs, as I mentioned earlier, and you can explore these too, or augmented reality headsets to explore a virtual heart, or have some kind of embedded virtual reality experience as someone in an elderly nursing home situation, and have you wear the headset and take the perspective of someone who's ill, maybe a COVID-19 patient, and understand what they're going through. Maybe you're being trained to be a doctor or a nurse or a paramedic. So number 9 is challenge or tension. Maybe having a virtual sharing wall and having a competition of people sharing different objects or ideas in a Padlet, padlet.com, and having little sticky notes on the wall. Maybe you're using my friend Paul Kim's tool called Smile, and you can go to the website called Smile Up, type in Stanford Smile Up. It's a question evaluation tool, and it's a question generation tool. What Smile does, it enables people to ask questions at 5 different levels, from knowledge to evaluation, or generate them. So kids can ask a question, it will tell them it's a level 3 question, a level 4 question, a level 5. And you can have competitions for levels of questions that kids are asking them. So they can ask a new question: what is turbulence? Or why is turbulence dangerous to small airplanes? What is turbulence? So it would be a low level question. Why is turbulence dangerous to small airplanes? Would be a higher level question. And it will evaluate them according to the levels. And then it will also generate questions. So why is turbulence dangerous to small airplanes? It's level 4, okay? What is turbulence is a level 1, okay? So kids start understanding that the difficulty of questions. Why did Elon Musk successfully launch SpaceX program? What are things Tesla should do? How do you compare Elon Musk to Nicholas Tesla? So if you know something about Tesla, is a new car company in America. It's very popular today. And so is SpaceX, our space program. And so it can evaluate the level of questions that you're asking. And so forth. And again, it's free. Smile Up, type Smile Up Stanford or Paul Kim Smile, and you can get the tool downloaded. Also, people are using Pinterest today to as a database. So Pinterest is a tool that's become very popular to create databases of things. And so you can create a database of articles. My students create database of news articles in my class. My students do mind maps of the discussion. There are tools like bubble.us to create a free mind map of discussions. Also Glyphy and Mindomo and so forth. You can also do timelines online of their learning. So students can generate timelines at X Timeline, Timeline Curator, Time Mapper to look at all content in a historical point of view. And it's very powerful to see all the knowledge they're learning in a timeline. And then you click on that timeline, you get some data, you get some information that pops up at them or at you. I also have my students create brochures. They create infographics. They create flyers in a tool called Canva. Canva is a free tool for designing things. My students love Canva. So creating brochures that are fun and interactive in Canva. My students, you can see them here. These are generated from my students in educational technology. Number 10 gets at goals, in effect, final projects. So my students might create a final video. They might create a Canva kind of thing. They might create a timeline. They might create a mind map. They might create a database. So all these things are final projects. They might create a website. They might create a video of their learning. They might create a wiki book or wiki book chapter. And you know, there's Wikibook Junior chapters for kids. There's a website called Wiki Junior for young kids from birth to age 12. They have nonfiction books at Wikibook Junior, Wiki Junior. And so I was going to have an activity if this was live and type in what you've learned so far. Hopefully you've learned something. Hopefully ideas are popping in your head. Maybe one, maybe two, maybe hope, maybe not. Maybe there's no hope for me. But hopefully you've thought about this tech variety model from tone, encouragement, curiosity, variety, autonomy, relevance, interactivity, engagement, tension, and yielding products. Those are the 10. Those are the 10 principles of tech variety. And so hopefully you can think about using one of those or two of those. In the Tech Variety book, there are 10 ideas for each of them and a variation, so really 20. There are 200 total ideas in the book. It says 100, but I'll give you 200. Find what works for you. There might, you might have one thing that works for you. Might be no things that work for you. I'll stop sharing at this point and just say, Tech Variety, go to the website, download it, TEC-VARIETY.com. I had to check. And get your Chinese version or English version, or translate it to whatever language you want to translate it to. It's a free and open access book. So if you translate these contents to your native language, let me know. Let me know how you're using it. Let me know what your purpose for using it is. And please share both the book, the free book, with your colleagues and friends, as well as share the ideas that spring from this or other places. You don't just have to use this book. There are other places that you can go and find interesting ideas. So by all means, try it out and share with me, share with your friends, share with your students, share with your parents, share with your administrators. Maybe have an activity as a department or as a school where you share with each other how you're using some of the ideas from here, or go to Catlin Tucker's books, which are more K-12 oriented. She has many excellent ideas in her books. I highly recommend them. And there are others. There are tons of others. And take a look and try them out and let me know how it goes. I wish you all well. And I'll stop this recording. It will go to the cloud and we'll go to part 3 next. So thanks for coming for the first 2 parts, or maybe you skipped part 1. Okay, but at least you came to this one. So thank you very much. And I've enjoyed meeting you virtually, sort of. We'll go to the cloud.